The rocket hit at 8:20 in the morning, and in the chaos that followed, no one expected the quiet woman from admin to save over 100 lives. But Staff Sergeant Elena Ward wasn't who anyone thought she was, and by the time the smoke cleared, every person on that base would know her name. This is her story. Kuwait, 7:15 in the morning. The sun climbed over desert walls, casting sharp shadows across the forward operating base. The air hummed with routine. Generators churned. Boots scraped gravel. Near the motor pool, voices crackled over radios. Orders barked, responses sharp. Inside the admin building, Staff Sergeant Elena Ward sat at her desk, fingers moving across a keyboard with practiced rhythm. Her uniform was perfect, creases sharp, boots polished, but her face gave away nothing. No stress, no urgency, just focus. She processed morning reports, reassignments, leave requests, status updates, the kind of paperwork that kept a base running but never made headlines. A printer jammed halfway through a packet. She fixed it without a word. A young specialist knocked on her door, confused about how to submit clearance forms. She walked him through it step by step, patient, precise. To most people, Elena Ward was just admin. Background noise. Necessary? Maybe, but forgettable. Pilots passed her in the hallway without a second glance. One of them, a cocky young lieutenant named Carl Mercer, had joked in the DFAC a few weeks back that she probably couldn't tell an Apache from a ceiling fan. His buddies laughed. Elena didn't react, didn't correct him, didn't mention that she wasn't even Army. He wouldn't have cared anyway. Elena never explained herself. She didn't need to. At 10:30, she stepped outside with a black notebook tucked under her arm. The heat hit her immediately, dry and relentless. She walked along the edge of the flight line, boots crunching on gravel. It wasn't part of her job. No one asked her to be there, but she went anyway. She stopped near a row of concrete barriers where the heat shimmered. Above parked Black Hawks and C-13OS, a maintenance team worked on a tail rotor nearby. She stood silently, watching every movement. Her eyes tracked the tools, the angles, the rhythm of their work. She didn't look like she belonged out there, but her gaze followed the work with more than curiosity. It was something deeper, something practiced. Back in her room later that evening, she pulled up a training module on TACP communications protocol. She replayed a simulation without sound, her hand moving over the keyboard with a speed that didn't match her job description. She entered coordinates faster than the tutorial could keep up. Most people only saw the surface. A quiet woman in her late 30s. Admin specialist. Pencil pusher. Background noise. But Elena Ward moved through that noise like someone who had learned long ago how to hear what others couldn't. Something underneath. Something no one asked about. And that was fine. She wasn't here to be noticed. She was here to work. And she was very, very good at that. The next morning started like any other. 8:20. The base stirred with its usual rhythm. A convoy was being prepped near the South Motor Pool. The DFAC served eggs that were just a little too dry. Pilots reviewed briefings. Techs checked wiring on a grounded C-130 music. Played low on someone's speaker until a sergeant walked by and it went silent. It was another hot, cloudless morning in Kuwait. Routine, familiar. Elena was finishing up paperwork inside admin when the first impact hit. The explosion wasn't close enough to knock her down, but the vibration rolled through the floor like a wave. The lights flickered. 2 seconds later, the alarm blared across the compound. Incoming rocket. She didn't flinch. Outside, a column of black smoke curled above the west fuel yard. The blast radius had caught 3 soldiers of guard near the fence line. One was already down. The other 2 were stunned, trying to drag him toward cover. Elena was out the door before anyone called for help. She crossed open ground with purpose, her boots pounding the dirt. She dropped beside the wounded soldier, checking his breathing, pressing her hand into the gash on his leg. Blood soaked through his uniform. She didn't hesitate. Glove up. She snapped at one of the others. Pressure here. Keep his head low. Her voice cut through the noise. It wasn't panic. It was muscle memory. She secured a makeshift tourniquet using her belt and directed one of the privates to keep the airway open. When medics arrived seconds later, they paused, surprised to see her already mid-protocol. She didn't wait for thanks. She was already moving again. Inside the Tactical Operations Center, chaos had taken hold. Radios squawked. A junior airman tried to sort through fragmented reports. The officer in charge was down with a shoulder injury, slumped in the corner, conscious but out of the fight. No one had taken charge. Elena stepped in. She moved quickly to the map display, scanning for known impact zones. She called out wind data, blast patterns, potential secondary hits. A tech sergeant hesitated. She was at command. She was just admin, but her presence was unshakable. She flagged a missing sector in the live feed and manually rerouted the input to restore eyes on the west perimeter. People started moving. Orders were given. Structure returned. No one could say why she knew what to do. No one asked, but in the middle of the chaos, Elena Ward held the center. And for the first time that morning, things started to make sense again. By 9:50, the Tactical Operations Center was still thick with tension. The smoke outside had begun to drift west, but the threat wasn't over. Elena stood behind a half-lit console, eyes locked on a flickering data feed showing movement beyond the perimeter. Something about the pattern didn't sit right. She leaned in, adjusted the screen manually, and rerouted the signal through a backup relay. The image cleared. A small cluster of heat signatures. Not vehicles, not civilians. Without waiting, she pulled up the wind vector model and began calculating drift. A nearby comms operator glanced at her, confused. "Need help?" he asked. She didn't answer. Her hands moved fast, feeding coordinates into a manual overlay. She spoke softly, almost to herself, using terms most in the room hadn't heard since tech school. Terrain masking, pattern lock delay, low profile vector glide. One of the junior sergeants looked over at another, brow furrowed. That's not admin speak. When the next report came through possible second wave, potential UAV threat, Elena didn't flinch. She ordered a channel shift, rerouted encrypted comms through the backup node, and confirmed cross-sector visual coverage. The room started to slow around her. People stopped barking over each other. They started listening. A young airman leaned in and whispered to the tech next to him. "Who is she?" Elena called out grid references before anyone requested them, adjusted the tactical feed to compensate for time drift, then pulled a line of coordinates from memory. Carl Mercer, standing off to the side with a bandage across his wrist, finally stepped forward. "You're not just admin, are you?" She didn't look up. Her voice stayed even. "Focus on coverage. We've got 10 minutes before another pass." No one pressed her, but the room was shifting. Eyes followed her now. Movement slowed when she entered their space. The center of gravity in the room had moved, and everyone felt it. It was Sergeant Ruse who found the file. He hadn't meant to. He was trying to verify her clearance level when a folder popped up on the shared drive. It wasn't hidden, just quiet, just like her former rank. Captain, United States Air Force, call sign, Echo 7, assigned unit, 74th Fighter Squadron, Moody Air Force Base, aircraft, A-10 Thunderbolt 2, combat tours, 3, commendations, Medal for Valor, a medal with 3 oak leaf clusters, status, honorably discharged following injury sustained in combat, shrapnel to left leg, permanent limited duty. When Ruse read it aloud, the room went still. Carl didn't speak. He just stared at Elena like he'd seen her for the first time. She finally looked up, eyes meeting his. The silence between them wasn't uncomfortable. It was understanding, the kind that didn't need words. Someone in the back exhaled low. "That's why she knows. That's why she sees things we don't." Elena said nothing. She turned back to the screen and made a small correction to the incoming flight pattern. Then she keyed her MIC and calmly gave the coordinates for the UAV diversion route. Nobody questioned her after that. By 10:45, the commanding officer was still unreachable. His last known transmission reported him en route to inspect the west sector fuel damage. Then silence. Radio dead. Backup lines intermittent. The operations center pulsed with noise reports, scans, hands moving fast across keyboards but no direction. No clear command. Elena stood by the central monitor, headset slung low around her neck. The major was down with a concussion. The XO had been airlifted out with chest trauma. The base had officers, yes, but none trained in real-time threat response. None with combat operations command. People started looking at her. No one said it. Not yet. She stepped forward. Her voice was clear but firm. "Patch me into TACP net. Assigned to 4 for ground relay. Pull JT from Echo Tower. I want his eyes on the southern ridge. Now." There was a moment of hesitation. Then Carl Mercer spoke from the back of the room. "She's not even on the command roster." Elena didn't turn to him. Instead, she pointed to the satellite feed lagging in Sector 4. "Recalibrate comms through the north relay and cut secondary encryption. You'll stabilize the sync in under 30 seconds. The tech sergeant ran the command. The screen cleared. Everyone saw it. Carl didn't respond, but he didn't interrupt again either. Elena rolled her shoulders back, scanned the topographic overlay, then keyed into the TAC channel. "This is Ward, acting command. Be advised, enemy movement has shifted west-northwest. Elevation 83 meters. moving low across drainage. Recommend 2 teams reposition behind southern ridge. Prepare to pop smoke on visual. Do not engage until my mark. The room snapped into motion. Outside, the base perimeter was shifting. Guard units repositioned. Spotters locked in scopes. Elena coordinated with the JTAC at Echo Tower, verifying line of sight coverage. She ordered UAV feed overlaid onto ground radar, giving them a 3-dimensional picture of the terrain. When a comms tech asked how she knew the overlay shortcut, she didn't answer. Then came the second threat. An inbound UAV, smaller than the first. Flying low. Heat signature masked by the fuel smoke, almost invisible until Elena caught a flicker on the southern radar arc. She didn't panic. It's not scanning, she said. It's targeting. Spoof the signal with base beacon B2. Run force telemetry west by 2 clicks. Pull wind drift data from 93 minutes ago and copy it into loopback. That'll give us 20 seconds to shift visual contact. The radar tech hesitated, but she was already doing it. Her fingers flew across the keys, bypassing the normal interface. The feed jumped on screen. The UAV veered slightly, hunting false data. She turned to Kyle. You've got eyes. Confirm visual. He lifted his binos. Confirmed. It's biting. Elena keyed her MIC again. TAC Alpha. This is Ward. Clear to mark. Smoke now. Seconds later, the real UAV passed over the marked position, an empty quadrant, and dropped. The payload detonated uselessly on scorched ground. Inside the TOC, no one spoke. The silence wasn't from fear. It was the weight of watching someone take control like she was born for it. Carl stepped closer. He looked tired, soaked in sweat, face tight, but there was no trace of doubt left in his voice. You flew at 10S. She didn't look away from the screen. Moody Air Force Base. 74th Fighter Squadron. 3 tours. He nodded slowly. The kind of nod that had nothing to do with rank or rules. She ran her hand down the screen, eyes scanning the data one last time. We're not out of this yet. I want fire teams in Quadrant 6. Fallback ready. If they come again, we hold them there. Keep the tower hot and every relay synced. No second chances. Orders kept flying. Elena called for case-evac priorities, checked fuel resupply coordination, directed Black Hawks to sweep over suspected fallback zones. She did it all calmly, precisely, never shouting. Her voice moved through the headsets like a metronome, steady in the noise, and the base followed. At 11:32, the last alert cleared. The threat passed, for now. Elena took off the headset, rolled her neck, and finally sat down. Carl leaned against the table across from her, arms crossed. I misjudged you, he said. She met his eyes. You weren't the only one. Neither of them smiled. There wasn't time for that. But the respect in the room was unmistakable. It didn't come from medals or files. It came from what they saw with their own eyes. In the middle of a firefight, a former pilot with a limp had stepped in and held the line, and no one doubted her. At 2:30 in the afternoon, the rotor wash-kicked up a cloud of dust as the Black Hawk touched. Down near the TOC, soldiers shielded their eyes. A senior Air Force officer stepped out, gait steady, flight suit marked with command insignia. Colonel Davis. Those who knew the name stood a little straighter. He moved quickly across the lot, scanning the aftermath. Damaged barriers, scorched ground, medical tents still active. Then his eyes found Elena. He stopped. A flicker of disbelief crossed his face, followed by recognition. He stepped closer and called out to her, voice carrying over the hum of generators. Captain Ward, Echo 7, still saving lives, I see. Conversations around them stilled. A few heads turned, then more. Carl stood off to the side, arms crossed, the words catching in his chest. Elena didn't respond right away. She stood calmly, hands behind her back, eyes steady. Colonel Davis stepped in front of her. You saved over 100 people today. Just like Kandahar, just like always. Then he saluted her. No hesitation, no ceremony, just respect. The silence broke. One by one, soldiers followed. No orders, no speeches, just quiet nods and raised hands across the open yard. Carl moved last. His salute wasn't polished, but it was honest. Elena returned the gesture with a soft nod. No smile, no speech, just presence. The moment didn't need explaining. The woman they thought they knew, the quiet one in the admin office, had led them through the worst of it. And she'd done it without ever asking for the spotlight. It wasn't about rank anymore. It was about who showed up when it counted. And everyone knew exactly who that was. At 5:40 in the evening, the sun hovered low over the horizon, casting long shadows across the base. The worst of the day had passed. Soldiers moved slower now. Medics still worked under canvas shade, wrapping bandages, checking vitals. The smell of burnt fuel hung in the air, faint but lingering. Elena walked the edge of the flight line, past the parked Blackhawks she'd helped stabilize earlier. A crew chief nodded to her. She returned it with a quiet thank you, and bent to secure a loose strap on a fuel rig. No orders, no attention, just small things done right. As she passed the open lock near the TOC, an A-10 rumbled overhead, cutting a wide arc above the base. Her eyes followed it. That sound was still familiar. The low thunder of raw power, the shape of the wings, the steady roll of a pilot on station. She didn't feel longing, just memory, a part of her that would always belong to the sky. Footsteps crunched on gravel behind her. Carl stopped beside her, arms folded, looking up at the same A-10. You didn't have to do any of this, he said. Elena glanced over, then back at the horizon. Maybe not, but I was here. He nodded, voice low. You kept this place standing. She didn't answer, just nodded once and kept walking. As the sky deepened into orange and purple, the base slowly returned to itself. The noise faded, the chaos settled, and Elena Ward, the woman once invisible to nearly everyone, left no speech, no ceremony, just the memory of how she stood in the middle of it all, calm and certain when everything else was falling apart. Not loud, not commanding, but unforgettable. If this story moved you, hit that like button and subscribe to Silent Warriors for more incredible true stories of courage, sacrifice, and the heroes who never seek the spotlight. These are the warriors who stand in the shadows, and their stories deserve to be told.